Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Shooting Rabbits in a Barrel, a podcast brought to you by Scarecrow Consultants. I'm thrilled today to be joined by our very own Scarecrow, Simon Perry. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Jess.
Hello, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. The sun's now shining after a rainy start to the day. So, yeah, it's looking nice outside and a good day for recording.
Exactly. So it's a beautiful day for some lessons learned. All right, so there's two questions we always ask every guest on Shooting Rabbits. The first is, what story would you like to share with us today? And what valuable lesson did you learn? So, Simon, what story would you like to share with us today?
Okay, so it's August 2014. In fact, it's the weekend before Scarecrow became an official company, as it turns out. And my brother and I take my father to London for the day. Now, my dad was a bit unsteady on his feet, so he could walk around a bit, but he'd been suffering from the after effects of diabetes for many years. So we took a wheelchair as well for when he got tired. And we'd had a lovely day around London, and the last sort of thing we were going to go and see before we went for something to eat was the Royal Observatory and the Maritime Museum in Greenwich Park. And if anybody's been, they'll know what a beautiful place it is. So we decided we'd do the observatory first. So we toiled up the hill to the observatory. My dad managed to make it up. We had a good time, looked around, came out, and it was time to walk down the hill to go to the Maritime Museum. And it was a lovely day. It was I think the second Saturday in August. The sun was out. There was a Simpsons cloudy sky, but it was lovely and warm. The park was full of people sitting down having picnics. And my dad said to me, Simon, he said, I'm feeling a bit tired, my legs are aching a bit, can we go down the hill in my wheelchair? And I said, yeah, of course, Dad, no problem. So we get him in his wheelchair, and I'm pushing him along. We come out the observatory, and it's a fairly steep hill, but I'm pushing him okay. And he turns to me and he says, Simon, you don't need to push me. I can manage in my wheelchair. I push myself all the time in it. And I went, no, you're okay, Dad. I'll carry on pushing. So I carried on pushing for a bit. He goes, no, you really don't have to. I know what I'm doing. So at this point, I went, okay then, Dad, over to you. And I took my hands off the back of the wheelchair. At this point, gravity kicked in. And my dad's wheelchair started running away. And my brother and I, we started sort of jogging slowly after it, thinking, he'll get control of it in a moment. And he got faster and faster, and he's starting to go down the path, and it's heading towards people having a picnic, faster and faster and faster. And we thought, there's no way we can catch him now. He'll sort himself out. And at that point, I don't know what he did. He must have jammed his hands in the wheels or something, but it was like something from a cartoon. You imagine my dad in this wheelchair running out of control down Greenwich Hill towards seated civilians, having a lovely day. And then all of a sudden, the wheelchair swerves off sharply to the left, and my dad catapults out of the wheelchair like something from a sort of cartoon and misses a huge tree by about 6 inches and sort of lands on the floor in front of the tree. We run up to him at this point. Now, my brother's a little bit unimpressed by this. And there's a lot of swearing goes on at this, involving the F word and idiot and what the hell were you doing. My dad's lying on the floor laughing at this point. He's all muddy. I mean, although it was a dry day, he'd hit the ground with some force, so his shirt was all covered in mud, his trousers, his knees of his trousers were all covered in mud, and all of the people around started running up to see if he was okay as we sort of nonchalantly stroll up. At which point he turned to some Americans who were asking him if they're okay, and decided to tell them that they're my sons and they're trying to kill me, and laughed manically. Now, this isn't really part of the story, apart from the fact that, Americans don't necessarily share the same sense of humour as we do in this country. So we're turning to them and going, we're not trying to kill him. I'll do my dad. Them trying to kill me, my sons, them trying to kill me. They've let me run down the hill in my wheelchair, them trying to kill me. We're really not trying to kill him. My brother grabs him grabs him, picks him up. Sort of, my brother's a big beefy chap, puts him in the wheelchair, gives him a mouthful of abuse. So, right, we're taking you to the museum. You can spend your spending money on buying a clean T-shirt because you're an absolute mess now. But Dad carries on laughing. I have a little bit of a chuckle about it, which, you know, in hindsight, it could have been a really nasty end to the day. So essentially, that's my story. You know, lovely day out, Greenwich Park. Dad says he can manage. Loose him. He nearly collides with a tree. We need to get mobbed by a load of Americans. Okay. Now, just to give a little bit more background, my brother claims that this is my story's not the truth. It is. And my brother claims that I went, well, F you then, and pushed him away from me at great speed. I didn't. I just said, okay, Dad, it's over to you. But if you ever speak to my brother, you'll get a different version of this story. So that's the story anyway.
That's the story. There's at least 2 episodes of Seinfeld have flashed in my head as you've been telling me this, because I think a similar thing happens to a lady in a wheelchair, and Kramer and George pretend to be, let's make it look like for these tourists that there's a real German mugging, whereas it's like, let's make it look for these American tourists that I wish I kill our dad. Okay, Simon, what valuable lesson did you learn? The
valuable lesson I learned was the truth of the Dunning-Kruger effect. And if you're not familiar with it, the Dunning-Kruger effect is some research that was done by a couple of psychologists in, I think, 1999, I think. David Dunning, and I can't remember Kruger's name. I can't remember his first name. But basically, the result of this is people that are truly incompetent often overestimate their own level of competence. And my father was a prime example of this. He claimed a level of competence in wheelchair operation that, as it transpired, he didn't have. He was totally incompetent in controlling a wheelchair on any kind of serious slope. So it was a perfect demonstration of the Dunning-Kruger effect, which of course applies in systems engineering as well. We talk about, people, process and tools and having competent people. Well, yeah, sometimes when we do competency assessments, particularly if people self-assess, the Dunning-Kruger effect comes in very often. A lot of people overestimate their level of competence, and that's obviously a bad thing for us as systems engineers. So that's the moral that I learned from the Greenwich Park wheelchair incident.
That's what it says on the police report as well. The Greenwich. Wow. Okay. It's super important, isn't it, that we are, especially in our work, because we go in and we're trying to help organizations implement MBSC, and we need to understand what the state of things is and where training needs to and where development needs to. And there's no shade on anybody. It's, everybody has to learn these things.
Exactly.
But it's, let's get a real assessment of where you're at and where you'd like to get to and what we can do about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Competency is very important.
Yes, massively. Do you think there's any, when you go into organizations, competency is a massive aspect of it? Where would you rank it in comparison to other aspects that come in when we're assessing an organization? Because I think competency is pretty big. I know what I would say, but you go.
I think if I speak organisationally, I think a lot of organisations are guilty of falling into the Dunning-Kruger sort of stats, if you will, that they overestimate their level of competency in systems engineering. It also happens on an individual basis as well. We see it quite often on training courses. There's nearly always one person on every training course we do who, doesn't really want to be there. They know it all, but as soon as the training starts and you get them doing a bit of the workshop, it's often quite obvious that their level of competency is nowhere near what they're claiming. So yeah, we do see it all the time, and it is an important thing to address. I think one of the big problems that we're seeing in systems engineering, certainly with some of our customers, is actually the term systems engineer. We get people on our course say, "Oh, I'm a systems engineer," and they're not really. They're a system engineer. might know about flight control systems or navigation systems or electronic warfare systems. So there's a lot of organisations that have people that think they're systems engineers, that the organisations call systems engineers, but wouldn't be systems engineers in the in the way that it's understood in the wider systems engineering community.
Yeah, like assessed against, for example, the Cozy Competency Framework with
Exactly.
the key systems engineering skills. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much for your story and the associated wisdom that came with it. I have learned not to let go of somebody on a hill if they're in an object with wheels.
Yeah, irrespective of their level of claimed competency.
Irrespective, yeah. That's right. Well, you heard it here first, listeners. We make these mistakes so you don't have to. But thank you so much for joining us, Si. It's great to have you on.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. Listeners, if you'd like to get involved, you can email us at rabbits@scarecrowconsultants.co.uk and come and join us on the podcast for yourselves. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again next time.